messiness, let's treat this as a neutral quality. Sometimes it's just how your brain works, where having things physical helps. You have other things that you're doing. It's not like you're twiddling your thumbs while you could be, filing things. I think one of the things that can be bad is maybe some of us are perfectionists. And so just the idea of, what you want, and that seems so far away that, why even try? And then, a lot of us are always trying to be, straightening things out, cleaning things up, categorizing things. But a couple of weeks later, the mess returns.
Mandy Morrow.
This isn't a law, but cognitive scientists have studied some of these things, and messiness does tend to go with other traits that everybody agrees are positive. So messy people are frequently creative, they're frequently flexible, they can be practical, they can be very collaborative. Maybe you identify with some or all of these. And then I frequently find that, messy people are also really good at seeing the big picture. So they really understand the total goal. There's a lot of good things that you bring, they bring, we bring. So one of the things is that you're not lazy. It's not because you don't care. It's not because you're not trying. And I think a lot of us have been very successful despite that. So maybe even because of it.
What is project management?
So just to totally zoom out, what is project management? You probably have some idea, but just to kind of get on the same page. So here's the Project Management Institute's definition. I wanted to add to that. I'm really thinking about project management as managing temporary efforts. I think for some of us, my job is really a series of temporary efforts, like almost everything I'm working on is a project. But some of you guys might, you have a lot of regular day-to-day work, but you are still trying to accomplish the occasional project. So, a temporary effort with a goal at the end, and it's kind of on top of your regular work, so that makes it even more challenging. And then I suppose a project could be just one person, but I am really more talking about coordinating multiple people towards a common goal. So I think project management is when you really start to see its value is when you are working with a lot of people and you're trying to get, multiple people to get to a finish line.
But does coordination require organization?
But so there was this word coordination. Doesn't that require organization? Yes, it does. Yes, it does help to have some level of organization. But I'm here to tell you it is not as much as you think. I am, as I said, a project manager. I have been a project manager, sometimes not officially entitled, but certainly managing a lot of projects for over a decade. I'm also PMP certified, so I passed the test and they gave me the piece of paper that says I know what I'm talking about. So if I say you can be messy, you can be messy.
Mandy's live feed fills the top right corner.
So I've kind of structured this to kind of first give, some tips and tricks that have worked for me for kind of that barest semblance of order piece of it. And then sort of kind of encourage you guys to lead into other aspects that really don't have anything to do with, chaos or order. Just other qualities that can really help you maybe use more of your creative side, your big picture thinking side.
Text, corral the mess.
So yes, first, how do you corral the mess?
Tips and tricks.
So one thing that I'm always trying to think about and encourage people is that the particular tool doesn't really matter in my perspective. I realize I'm against the counter programming here as somebody who's telling you not to use Excel, but I'm here to say I've used Excel a lot and sometimes it's really useful. The thing to think about when you're selecting a tool is what will you and your team use? And kind of as I was saying before, project management, it gets really, it becomes really useful when you are working with multiple people. And when I'm thinking about the team here, I'm not just thinking about the people that you work with every day. Also think about the stakeholders or people involved in the project who are more reviewing the work, who you maybe need to say, hey, this is why this is a good idea. Those are also people who you would count as part of the project, the consumers of the project too, maybe. Though whether or not you need to kind of show any inner workings to your users depends. So really kind of thinking about not only what will your team use, but also how will you want to show anything that's going on in the project. So when my husband, he doesn't work here, but his bosses, at the end of the day, they want to see something in Excel. So I always tell them, don't fight it, just put it in Excel. On the other hand, some of you might work with people who get really excited about a new technology or want to try something new. In that case, project management software has a lot to recommend itself. I have Asana and Trello as two free options you can always try if you just want to kind of get started with a project. But either way, really that buy-in is key. Will other people look at your tracking software that you have broken down the tasks and say, I've done this, or put in a date, or just any sort of thing that they can kind of like help with the whole communication of the project and join in. That's more important than any particular tool.
Create catch-alls. Clippy appears.
So you have your tool or tools, and this is something, ideally, you would have like one omni system and it would be great and everything would be in one place and everything would work and that would be so wonderful. I do not know why I'm not capable of doing this, but I leave notes in every single place you could possibly leave notes. I've tried to just stick with one. I don't know why I can't. So what I have done is everywhere I create a really high level framework to capture those notes. So my OneNote has a tab for every project and nothing more complicated than that, just a tab for every project. My Outlook, my Asana, my Google Drive. Anywhere I end up taking a note, I have someplace that I can dump it. Because that's more important, I have found, than having the perfect place. It's almost like the situation where you have something that doesn't quite fit, and you know that there's 3 different places you could have put it. And so long as you don't have somebody else who's trying to clean up after you, you'll find it in one of those 3 places. It's almost like that digitally. So the other thing, other than, I have some other suggestions on the slide. I have found that because of their encouragement of maybe big data and cloud storage and everything, search has gotten better. And with AI, you can pinpoint things that are like maybe in it's in like 5 different files, a lot easier than it once was. It's almost like people are developing things to help us messy people to find things. But the most important thing is to write it down in the first place, because you can't find something that you never create.
Text. Prioritize visibility.
And then this is just a really kind of light suggestion, but prioritize visibility. One thing that cognitive researchers have found with, I think they called this particular one, called them scruffies. Those are the people who are, I think it was scruffies and neats or something. But scruffies, they still get stuff done, but they really use their physical cues to remind them to do things and to organize their lives. So when you're working in a really digital space, sometimes that's harder. So things that I have found helpful: long scrolling documents. They're not pretty, but Control F is your friend. Project management software, another kind of plug to try something like Trello or Asana, because they really are designed to kind of spread out all your tasks on one screen and being able to kind of put different sorting onto that. So that can be really helpful. The next spreadsheet, just put everything in a different tab. And then leave links all over the place to yourself. I've never been sad that I sent somebody a link, never feel bad about saying, I'd like a link to the notes, because those almost like littering the ground that you walk on with links to your useful documents will help you find them. So remember one of the places that you put those links.
Use your strengths. Keep your eyes on the prize.
All right, so use your strengths.
Doing is more important than documenting.
As I said, there's lots of things other than order to making a project successful, and I have really found that these are the pieces that are more helpful than just the organizational level. So doing is more important than documenting. This is something to always just keep in mind if you ever kind of are entering and you're like, I don't know if I'm doing this the right way. Lean into your colleagues who are really smart and capable and let them run as much as possible. So managing is work, but I think managers can sometimes focus a little bit too much on the artifacts, and that's just kind of the materials that projects create and things like that. The actual thing is not the artifacts, it's the product at the end. It's the building, the coding, the creation. So letting that happen and helping that happen as much as possible is your job as the project manager when you're putting on the project management hat, if you're not usually a project manager. So every time you kind of come across a concept, looking at it and thinking, does this help us work together? Is kind of how I approach it. I don't create every single type of artifact that the Project Management Institute tells you you need. It all kind of really depends on the group and the outcome that I'm really looking for. And that's all because one of the things that is great about MESS is it can sometimes spark something that you wouldn't have otherwise seen. So if you're letting people work, if you're not kind of worrying about, is this in the right place? And you just kind of think, well, let's just put it all in the open. Let's dump it in this document. Let's, ideate on things. That is really one of the ways that I think you can really kind of get some magic going in a project.
Coffee stains cover a page with text. What are we making? Who is doing it?
Oh, I clicked away.
Make the abstract concrete. Articulate the takeaways. This needs to happen.
And then one of the ways that you can help, so, that sounds chaotic, just letting people speak. Really, another kind of way to lead into the mess is to bring in people that might have a different opinion. And that will be a messy meeting. It might be a project that feels chaotic. But one way that you can kind of help with that, it's not anything that is actually structural, any kind of structure or order. It's helping people make the abstract concrete. So in practice, this really looks like asking the dumb questions a lot of the time. So, somebody says, well, this needs to happen. And you say, is this what you mean by this needs to happen? And you stop everything dead even. And then at the end of that, well, who will do this work? Is that going to be you? Is that going to be you? And then, getting people to actually articulate what they're going to do, who's going to do it, sometimes that's really all you need when you're working with strong people. And sometimes it's really important too, because there's some people that I work with that if I don't stop them, they'll have 10 takeaways that I didn't even think of. And then sometimes that's great, and you come in and you're like, wow, it's already done. And sometimes you're like, oh no, we gotta undo this. So kind of, being the person who's always asking the questions, even when it seems like they might be kind of obvious, I have found is really kind of a way to make the things go from ideas to actually getting done. The other thing with this too is that sometimes the reason we don't want to ask who will do the work is because these projects are things that we're doing on top of our regular job. So it's a lot of extra work. So sometimes the answer is who will do the work. It's like, oh, it's me and I don't have time. And being honest about lack of resources and then being able to have a conversation about, is there a way that people can help you with that? Or is this something that we have to say, we don't have the resources for this at this time, can stop just kind of, one of the things I found can happen in projects especially, one of the things I've noticed that can happen in projects is just, you keep on meeting about the project, but if you don't actually have the resources to do the work, you're just kind of taking everybody's time in a 30-minute or a 1-hour meeting. And it'd be better to say, stop, we don't have the resources. Let's go talk to the manager to find the resources, than to keep on, with the treading water meeting. And that's not any sort of organization, it's just kind of being okay with being the bad guy almost, or the person to ask the questions, the person to really kind of keep poking at a concept until the group can kind of make what is kind of abstract into something more concrete.
Always start with a goal.
And here's the one thing that I'm going to say, I'm going to actually recommend you do. So a lot of stuff not to do, like you don't have to make this artifact, you don't have to do this other thing. One thing that will really help you is to always start with the goal. And a project charter, let me see, written down the definition. A document issued by the project initiator or sponsor that formally authorizes the existence of a project and provides the project manager with the authority to apply organizational resources to project activities. So all a fancy way of saying a project will say, this is a project, temporary effort. This is what we want to achieve, kind of like a goal statement. And then I usually would say, this is who we are, your stakeholder list. And that's really all you need. If you can get your core project team to agree on that, you can always revisit that as you go through kind of, as you go through any other kind of messy scenarios with, things coming up, plans changing. That's one of the things, being able to be adaptable and flexible. That's something a lot of messy people have. How do you make your project be able to be adaptable and flexible? You can always come back to the goal. Don't focus too much on individual plans, or if you do, be willing to scrap them, to throw them away. I had another slide in here that was that I decided to scrap for time, but it's about how, the thinking is the work. There's very nice templates. You can type something into AI and they'll spit out something nice. But really, like, a lot of the time what the project needs is for you to be thinking critically about what needs to happen and break it out in a way that makes sense for you and your teammates, knowing your teammates' skills. So what comes out at the end might not look that pretty, but if it's something that you have thought about, you have made progress on that project. And that kind of critical thinking, even if what ends up as kind of like a messy looking document, I have found that that's way more helpful than, a nicely filled in template or a very nicely, like a project with lots of automated rules that moves really smoothly. So just knowing that having to do that work is really part of the thing that advances the project. So having that charter is always something that you can come back to, you can revisit, you can revise. It's a thing you can always stop and say, hey, wait, we're not making progress. This is our goal. And it allows you to kind of use your skills as like a big picture thinker to help other people join in with you on that big picture to help them see it. A couple other bonus things that can help in scope, out of scope statements, that's just, this is something we'll address, this is something we'll address, this is something we won't address. I think that can be really helpful for some of us messy people too, because stating what is not going to happen can kind of help you from getting too like galaxy brained. I think I can be guilty of that one, like we could fix everything, but making sure that you're not trying to fix everything. You got your out of scope statement. A communication plan, that sounds maybe fancy, but it's really kind of like, we agree that we're going to meet, and then also maybe thinking about, okay, who's not in the room, but is in that stakeholder list, how do we keep them in the loop? And then constraints, you got a budget, we got a timeline. If you know that this can only happen in your little team or your department, or maybe even your school, that kind of sphere of influence constraint might be helpful to note, so that, because this charter is something that you can always come back to refresh yourself on why we started this project in the first place and what we're trying to set out to achieve.
Resources and inspiration.
So, just some resources and inspiration. I got a lot of these ideas from this book called Messy by Tim Hartford. It's like one of those pop science books, so I don't know if I read it now, if I would be like, yeah, because I feel like the second read of those, I'm like, maybe you lean too hard to this, but I found it a really interesting read. The Project Management Institute that I referenced before, if you ever hear a concept or want to learn more, it's a great place to go. So I would go there and then say, okay, life isn't perfect, I'm not perfect, I'm messy. Here's how we make it work for me. And those are just two links to some UW resources in Trello and Asana, both of which have free tiers, which you can try out if you think that that sounds like something that might help you in your work. And that is it for my presentation. Does anybody have questions, comments, anything like that?
In a cartoon, one man says "oh my god" while standing over the shoulder of another man using a computer. The computer user scrolls through items in his documents folder.
Yes.
Text. Pro tip, never look in someone else's documents folder. Mandy walks away.
Thank you. So I'm always curious with project managers, like if you are willing to share, like how do you kind of organize yourself? If you have any like tips or tricks or like certain methodology or, like what works for you.
Mandy replies.
Yes, so I have found that honestly, paper is really important for organizing myself. Just kind of the act of every day writing down the things I want to do. And even if it was the same thing I wanted to do yesterday, writing it down again to kind of, it helps like reinforce me during the day when I have things coming in all the time. And, it can, I think a lot of us, if you are in the more of the projecty space, you're never just on one project, you have multiple projects. So I'm trying to get back to, okay, I really was going to do this today because I wrote it down on a piece of paper. And if I don't do it, I'm gonna have to write it down tomorrow. That sounds very silly. Otherwise, kind of the things that I've said about, having a folder for like everything in every place that I might want to put something. And not a lot of levels of folders, just one level of folders. I just drag and drop one time and it's there. Did I say another question?
She offers her microphone to an off-screen attendee.
So how you talk about needing a project charter? How do you convince an organizational culture that when you tell people we need a project charter so we can determine, so we can remember what it is we're working towards? How do you convince them when they tell you we don't do project charters here? That's not something we've ever done, and it's not something we're going to do for this.
I feel like this is like your advice to me in the last one. I would just not call it a project charter. You just show up, you don't say it's a project charter, you just say it's team goal or something, and just put in what you want. Because it sounds almost like from that question, I don't know if it's based on anything, but like somebody's had some experience with project management in the past where they just didn't find it valuable. And so they're like, well, that's not what we do.
The camera pans to face Mandy.
So there's different ways of project managing different size projects, and sometimes I think depends on the project, but one of the approaches, especially that I'm trying to give here, is that you don't have to, if you kind of read a book on project management, it'll have all of these things that you must do, and that's great if you are organizing a large team, like maybe like, I don't know, something like the Workday ATP thing, like, yeah, you gotta use all those things. When you're thinking about how can I improve this one thing in my own department, you probably don't need all that stuff. So just, paring it back and remembering that it's about doing and it's about working with your colleagues, can help you kind of filter out anything that, will just end up being more in your pile of documents that are unstructured.
But you didn't mention Smartsheet in your list of tools.
It was Smartsheet. I was told you no longer have a license for Smartsheet at UW. But yeah, Smartsheet could be one of the tools. Though, yeah, I have heard that we don't have the license anymore, though some people are still very attached to it. Any other questions?
We have one comment from online saying that OneNote is a great tool that I use to track my paper notes and to-dos.
I also use OneNote, in addition to paper and Notepad++ and Google Docs. And Asana. Anything else? Any other kind of, I guess we have, oh, we just have 2 minutes, so I won't open it up for discussion. I'd be interested in chatting afterwards if you guys have any kind of similar kind of tips and tricks. One of the things with this presentation is, it might just be, I wasn't totally sure if this was just me, but hopefully it was, then you guys could just kind of be like, well, she's got a special mind, so
Logo, Wisconsin.
can at least have that. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
University of Wisconsin-Madison.